If you want to turn your Bibles, we're in Exodus 13. Exodus 13, we're going to be in verses 1 and 2, and then 11 through 16. So kind of jumping around a little bit. In our home, when we have a special meal, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas, you know it's going to be a special meal because of one thing my wife does. Every year for these special meals, she buys a bottle of Martinelli's sparkling apple cider. You guys know those Martinelli's? Yes, sparkling apple cider. It's a staple in our home. Some families have fine china, not us. We got Martinelli's, right? It could be on a disposable, one of those paper plates, but it's fancy because it's Martinelli's. When my wife was growing up, when the adults had their wine, the little kids at the kids' table had Martinelli's. And so the tradition stuck. The meal is special. It's set apart. You're not having Martinelli's with a midweek frozen pizza, right? You're not drinking Martinelli's with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. No, it's got to be ham or it's got to be turkey, okay? It is special. And I want you to keep that in mind as we work through our text today in the book of Exodus, this idea of being set apart. The term the Bible uses is consecrated. Set apart, consecrated. It means to be dedicated to God, to be made holy, not for common use, but for sacred use. Last week, we saw that God was really intent that his people never, ever forget what he did for them. And for those that need to be caught up to speed, the book of Exodus is the story of God's people, the Israelites, being slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. And then with great acts of judgment and wonders that he performed, he brings them out of Egypt through these 10 heavy plagues. And the last one was the plague of the death of the firstborn, whereby God brought Israel out of Egypt. God did not want his people to forget what he did for them, and so he instituted a few things. We saw a meal. He wanted them to have a meal, and this was the Passover meal, also known as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So there's a practice instituted every year. They have this meal. It reminds them of what God did for them, but he had one more practice that he wanted his people to do. And that was the practice instituted here in Exodus 13, 1-2, called the consecration of the firstborn. It says in verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both man and beast, is mine." The firstborn of Israel set aside for special use, and doing that reminded them of the plague that God used to deliver them from their slavery to Egypt. Where God brought judgment on the firstborn, he allowed for the Israelites to redeem their firstborn. More about that later. And so they have this practice. Whereas the Feast of Unleavened Bread is an annual practice, this practice of consecrating the firstborn is an ongoing practice. Each new family, each new generation of that family starts off their family's new generation with this remembrance. Okay? And as ever, it teaches us a few things. And here's our bullet points for the message. This consecrated baby is a reminder that this child belongs to God. It's a reminder that God is worthy of our first and our best. And it's a reminder that God has redeemed this child. It's also a part of the bigger picture, the bigger plan. Just as I have given this, my son, to God, one day, even more, God will give his son to me. There's a lot to look at today. I hope you are ready to put your thinking caps on, because we have quite a bit to get into, okay? And if we go for an hour and a half today, then that's not me, that's the Lord, okay? I'm just kidding, we're not going to go that long, but it is fairly involved, so we're going to do our best. Let's read the whole text. Starting in verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast, is mine. Jump to verse 11. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, so when you're getting to where God is taking you, okay, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. Or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in the time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man, firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand or frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. Amen. First, let's just wrap our minds around the practice itself, because this has happened a long, long time ago. Not something that's familiar to us. When Israel makes it to this land of promise, the promised land, the land of the Canaanites, they have this special ceremony for, again, the firstborn sons. So not all their sons and not their daughters, the firstborn son, where they sacrifice a lamb in the place of the son. And the reason is in verse 15. Your child asks, why do you do this? For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn land of Egypt, of man and beast. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first opened the womb. So it's a reminder of that night. This is the first generation, this firstborn generation that comes out of Egypt into the promised land is the first generation of God's salvation. That generation was delivered by a lamb. That's the night of Passover. So that firstborn of Israel has already been delivered by the Passover lamb. They're coming out of Egypt, and so they recreate that with each new firstborn generation. It's a reminder of their deliverance. Now, importantly, it's firstborn sons. It's not daughters. So you could have 6 daughters, and then the seventh one being your firstborn son, then you do it, okay? So you got to get that, okay? Why is that? Well, it's because the judgment that God brought on Egypt was commensurate to Egypt's own crimes. Remember what the Egyptians did to the Israelites. Exodus 1:22. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son that is born to the Israelites, the Hebrews, you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. So because the Egyptians were killing the sons of the Israelites, so that is the plague that God brings, and that's why it's the firstborn son, okay? Now, it wasn't just sons. It was also animals. It says all that first opens the womb. This would be livestock, even down to donkeys, believe it or not. Verse 12 to 13, we see that all the firstborn of your animals, even the donkeys. It gets into this idea of redemption. We're going to get to that in a little bit. For the animals, this would be a sacrifice. So if your lamb has their firstborn, then you sacrifice that lamb to God. Okay? It's an offering. You're certainly not going to do that with your sons. Okay? You're not going to sacrifice your son. God doesn't want blood sacrifice like that. And so for your sons, you redeem. That means you take a lamb that is acceptable to God and you kill that lamb in the place of your son. Okay? And all of this had very important teaching components that's handed down through the generations. And that's what we're going to look at starting in verse 1 and 2. I'll just start in verse 2. Consecrate to me all the firstborn of the animals and your sons. And he gets to the end of verse 2. Because they are mine. The first teaching of this practice. Our children belong to God. If there was ever anything that you felt rightly belonged to you, probably your child, right? I would hope so. Maybe you think it's your house. But guess what? If you pay a mortgage, not your house. It's the bank's, right? If you don't pay your taxes, it's the state's. So you don't even own your own house, even if you don't have a mortgage, okay? But if there's anything, it's our children. We created them, we raised them, we love them, we feed them, we finance them, we're responsible for them, right? Children aren't cheap. Surely this child is mine. Not so much. God says here, all that first opens the womb, both of man and beast, is mine. God claims ownership rights over the firstborn of Israel. This is important. This is the whole logic of the Exodus story in the first place. If you remember, why couldn't Israel stay as slaves in Egypt? Very simply, Israel did not belong to Egypt. Exodus 4:22. Moses, this is what God tells Moses to say to Pharaoh. Thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. Pharaoh could not keep Israel. Israel did not belong to Pharaoh. Israel belonged to God, his collective firstborn. And now the Israelites are acting out this same thing with their firstborn sons. Consider the ceremony. Consider you have your first son, maybe your first child, maybe not. But then you go to the temple and you offer a lamb in the place of your child. And it reminds you that if God hadn't done this for me, if God hadn't done this for every generation, all the way back to my people in Egypt, then I wouldn't be here today. You got to teach them the salvation of God. You got to act it out from the very beginning. It doesn't stop there. 14. And when in time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? I love this because it's very real. Children are very inquisitive. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And the explanation, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. Go down to 16. It shall be as a mark on your hand and as frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. You see how central the saving power of God was to the people of God. It's no different for us today. Everything of our lives is rooted on the gospel of Jesus Christ. He is the firm foundation that our whole lives are built up. But we see the logic. You gotta pass that down. You gotta put it deep into all the traditions and practices of your family. You gotta make that your identity as a family. So you pass it down. You do it at your son's birth, and then as your son's going along with the rest of your children, you teach them. Between your eyes, it's on your mind. On your hand, it's near your heart. Frontlets for your eyes and marks on your hands. These are called phylacteries. And if you've ever seen Orthodox Jews, they have little pouches. So they're little pouches, little boxes that they'll literally wrap to their foreheads, okay? And then they'll wrap it around their arms in the little boxes up top close to their heart. And these boxes have this actual text in here, which is very interesting, and other texts as well. It's a good reminder for us as parents. Our children are a gift from God. Our children are a gift from God. It is He who opens the womb. It is He who closes the womb. If you think about it, the whole drama of the book of Genesis, really the entire salvation story, all the promises of God from beginning to end are literally birthed from a barren womb. These children, if you go back, the promise to Abraham. What was the big promise to Abraham? You will have a child. And Abraham's like, I'm 100 years old. Where's the kid, you know? I've been collecting Social Security for like 35 years now, right? Where's the kid? Sarah, not able to have a child. And then the son of promise comes, Isaac. And then Isaac, his wife, guess what? She was barren too. And God opened up that womb. Why did God open up the womb of Rebekah? It says Isaac prayed for her. Opened up the womb. All the promises of God tracking forward on these barren wombs that God opens up. These are the Lord's children. That's the story of Hannah, a woman like so many in the Bible, again, that could not conceive. She poured out her heart to the Lord. The priest at the time, he thought she was drunk because she was pouring out her heart, not making sounds with her mouth, just moving her mouth, pouring out her heart to God, crying, God, please answer this prayer. And it's her response there when God finally gave her a child that teaches us. It says this, for this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. What a reminder for us, for our children. If there was ever a book that offered hope to the barren, it's the Word of God. Filling the womb is ingrained in the narratives of Scripture. And here I'm just going to tell a quick story. There's a dear brother of mine in the Lord at a church not too far, about an hour from here on the mid-coast. This man and his wife had been trying to have a child for 9 years. 9 years they were trying for a child. They never conceived. And then just, I think a couple of Sundays ago, they made the announcement at the church that the Lord had answered their prayers and given them a child. Can you imagine 9 years praying and praying and praying and not having that prayer answered? And then the Lord opens the womb. Aptly enough, the wife's name is Sarah. Sarah. These children belong to God. He's given these children to us, and there's hope in that too. There's great joy in that when it comes, when the baby comes, and there's great hope in that when the child doesn't come. That's the reminder for the Israelites, that they were indebted to God. Not my child, the Lord's child, steward of the good thing that God has given me. Okay? The second point, God is worthy of our first and our best. If I'm consecrating my firstborn son to the Lord, that teaches me God is worthy. Here I think on not really the firstborn son, because we're going to save that for a little bit later, but the firstborn of livestock. So let's kind of move to the other side of this discussion. The firstborn of your lambs, your goats, your cattle, all that good stuff. For an agrarian society, we're getting more to just like the heart stuff for the kids. This is more to like livelihood, okay? Your livestock was everything. It represented your food. It represented your future, your security. There were no guarantees that these animals would be fruitful. And so when you have a lot of time invested in that mother lamb, that mother sheep, and when that mama sheep has that lamb for the first time, and you go and you're excited, and the first thing you do is offer it as a sacrifice to God, that is costly. And that is a great exercise of faith, because you don't know if there's going to be another lamb. It was done in trust. It was done as an act of worship. Consider Abel. Genesis chapter 4, Adam and Eve, they have two sons, Cain and Abel. They made their offerings to God. This is considered the first act of worship in the Bible. This is what we read. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. And if you know the story, he kills his brother. That's definitely not worship, right? Why did God have regard for Abel's offering and not Cain's offering? Why is that? It was because Cain brought a few peas and carrots, and God's like, look, I'm not a vegetarian, okay? I'm a meat guy. Was that it? That's not it. The book of Hebrews gives us help here. Hebrews 11, verse 4, it says this, by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous by faith. God commending him by accepting his gift, and through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. So why did God have regard for Abel's offering? It's because it was done in faith. What Abel offered cost him. It cost him greatly. It required faith that God would make up for the loss incurred in the offering. And so what I'm saying is, I'm trusting you, God, with the first, and therefore proving I'll trust you with the rest. If you trust God with the first, you'll trust him with the rest. It communicated value. This wasn't offered as a way to appease and manipulate God. That's how the pagans do it. That's good karma, right? If you put out good, you get good back. If I do this stuff, then I'm going to get good on the other end. That's not how it works in the Word. We give our first and our best to God, not as an ATM machine to get back what we want, but because he is worthy of the offering. And how much we are willing to give up communicates how worthy and valuable we see God. It was the first and the best, and what a statement that is. Commanded to Israel to consecrate your firstborn. I mean, how precious your firstborn child. Offer me the first, offer me the best, exercise faith, worship me truly. And so the application comes to us. It comes to me, it comes to you. Do you offer God the first? Do you offer God the best? Said another way, do you bring Cain offerings or do you bring Abel offerings? Okay? And that's the tricky bit. Cain still brought an offering, but it didn't require anything. And a lot of times we think maybe we're doing good and we're checking off our Jesus boxes, right? Go to church and do all these things. Is it costing you anything? Does it require faith? Is it expressed in genuine worship? If you don't have faith, it's impossible to please God. You can go through every religious routine you want, but without exercising genuine faith, it's all a waste. Consider this instruction. This is really interesting. Let's put ourselves back in the shoes of the Israelites here. This is how a Cain would approach this offering of the firstborn of their lambs. Let's say you got a firstborn that was a runt, weak, no good, okay? Just absolutely no use to anyone. If you were a Cain, you would be feeling pretty lucky about that. I got to sacrifice this animal anyways. He's no use to me. This really worked out well for me, right? I can't get anything from him, and now I get to check off my religious box. Well, God thought about that. Read this in Deuteronomy 15:21. But if it has any blemish, if it is lame or blind, or has any serious blemish whatever, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. An Abel mentality would never even think about sacrificing this animal to the Lord. It doesn't cost me anything. It doesn't come close to expressing just how much I love the Lord my God. The more valuable something is, the more you are willing to give up for it. And so just take that. What are you giving up for God? Is what you are currently giving up for the Lord, offering to Him, what would that teach others about how much you love the Lord? Does He get the first of your heart? Does He get the first of your mind, your affections, your time, your money? Does He get the best of you? your talents, your gifts. I think about that often for my job. As many of you know, I'm bivocational. And I don't want to give the best of myself to my job. And that's a terrible thing to say from the pulpit, okay? We want to work to the Lord. We want to do our best. But when I think about it, I want God to get what is absolute best of me in the ministry. I want to give my time because what does Jesus say? These are the things that last forever. Store up for yourself treasures in heaven, right? Why would I want to labor for what is not going to last? The first and the best. And then when you really get it, and not to give the end of the sermon away, what did you get from God? You got his only son. The first and the best. We have to bring our Abel offerings, not our Cain offerings. That's what it teaches us. So we see the consecration of the animals. You take the animal, you go, you sacrifice it to God. You're trusting God with the first. You're trusting God with the rest. But let's go back to the sons, because we got a little bit more on the line here. My firstborn son. In our culture, being a firstborn son does not really, I think, count for a whole lot, okay? Well, maybe it does for you, but me, I'm the third of four. I'm the second-born son. And I never felt like I was behind being a second-born son. My older brother is a great guy. But in ancient times, being the firstborn son was a really, really, really big deal, okay? You wanted to be. That was a place of privilege. Once your father died, you were the new family leader. You ruled the roost. You were the guy. You received a double portion of the family inheritance. What it looked like was this. If you were the firstborn son and had two brothers, then that family inheritance was split in four, and you got half, and the other guys got 25%. Right? That's not fair. Doesn't matter. You're the firstborn. You're the golden child. Okay? There's something in this section that I think is a reality check for the golden child. Read this in verse 13. This is very curious. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. Or if you shall not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of a man among your sons you shall redeem. So much for being privileged. Verse 13 tells us that when it comes to the firstborn son position before God, you're no different than a donkey. You're no different than a donkey. You need to be redeemed just like the donkey needs to be redeemed. Now, that's a little hyperbolic, but I think there's a point here. And people have been trying to interpret this in all different ways. But the point I see is this. The donkey, an important animal for the Israelites, but an unclean animal. Okay? The donkey was a beast of burden. It got the work done, but it was ceremonially unclean. What that means is God would not accept it as a sacrifice. So you can't offer it as a sacrifice like you could with the lambs, but you also don't want to kill it because it gets a lot of work done. So what do you do? What do you do? Suffice it to say, because God wouldn't accept it, you would have to kill something else in its place. That is what redemption is. Okay? God allows them to sacrifice a clean animal, an animal that God will accept, in the place of the unclean as a substitute. That is called redemption. Okay? God accepts the killing of this thing in place of this thing, the clean for the unclean. And the fact that this same sacrifice will redeem firstborn sons, what does that imply? The clean for the unclean. In other words, when it comes to man's condition, even the firstborn son, even the best, even the golden child is no different than a donkey, okay? Than an unclean donkey. If he is to be fit for God, he needs to be made clean. And he can't do it himself. He needs someone else to make him clean. Go with me to Mark chapter 1. Go with me to Mark chapter 1. Let's hold this idea of clean, unclean. This is what we read. And a leper came to Jesus, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, "If you will, you can make me clean." So let's just stop there. We all know what leprosy is, a skin disease, a terrible, terrible skin disease. Not only was it painful, but what it did is it shut you out from the society you lived in, okay? It made you like a donkey. You are unclean. You are unfit for God. You can't draw near to God for worship. And not only that, if you're a leper and you touch someone else, you make them unclean. And so they had these leper colonies outside the camp. That's where all the outcasts were, banished away from the congregation. So you got a guy, probably his whole life has always been on the outside looking in, desperately seeking to be made clean. And so he comes to Jesus and he says, "If you will, you can make me clean." Verse 41, moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I will be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him and he was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once. We see the leper's faith. If he had touched any man, any woman, any child, his disease comes off to them. But in Christ, it's different. If you will, you can make me clean. Jesus isn't like every other man. He's the lamb that redeems. He's the one that makes clean. And that's the point of verse 42. And immediately leprosy left him, and he was made clean. You are not seeing a miracle of a skin disease going away. You are seeing the teaching that God can forgive human sin. And Jesus can make us right and fit and able to walk into the presence of God. This is not just a physical healing, it teaches a spiritual truth, namely that Christ makes us spiritually clean. That's the point, okay? This is the redemption of the church. This is the redemption of God's people. That we, all of us, need to be redeemed like the firstborn son if we want to be consecrated to God, if we want to be presented to God, fit for his use. The bad news is I'm a donkey over here, and I need to be made clean, but I can't do that myself. I need someone else to come. And that's what that redemption was with that lamb that was killed in the place. Well, now God has sent his lamb, Jesus Christ. It says in Isaiah 1:18, "Come now, let us reason together. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool." This is our Jesus. He makes the unclean clean. He says to the leper outcast, "You are welcome. You are totally healed." But there was something else that happened on that day, something that leper didn't realize, I'm sure. And this is where we bring it again full circle. If you want to go with me, Colossians 1:14 and 15. Colossians 1:14 and 15. This is what we read. Hold this idea of redemption again. Redemption of the firstborn. It says this. In Jesus we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. So we have this idea again, redemption firstborn, that we have redemption in Jesus. He is the firstborn of all creation. But now, with this firstborn idea, Israel forever had to redeem their firstborns. But Jesus, he's not the firstborn that needs to be redeemed. No, it says, he's the firstborn that redeems. Okay? Here we see Jesus, the firstborn of God. If we compare to the firstborn of Israel escaped death. The firstborn of God marched to death. The firstborn of Israel had the covering of a lamb to redeem them. The firstborn of God was the lamb that redeems them. And then it says this, and this is really where it hits. Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? It's just incredible for me to think about God spared the firstborn of Israel year after year after year, generation after generation after generation. He spares them. A lamb is sacrificed, substitute. But then when it comes to his own son, his own firstborn son, he didn't spare him. But he gave him up for us all, that we might have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. The Israelites were acting out something that God himself would do so far in the future. The firstborn son, Jesus, in the place of the leper. The firstborn son, Jesus, in the place of the unclean. The firstborn Jesus in the place of the rebellious orphan. That God looks down on the earth and he sees all of us, strangers to him, rebellious to him, living lives totally devoid of him, orphans spiritually, and he sends his only son. He did not spare his only son. The firstborn, the preeminent, the righteous, the holy, he actually goes through with it. He actually goes through with it. The place of the firstborn, a place of honor. Now we're going to end this one last time here. Also the place of representation. The firstborn represents every other son and daughter in the family. And so as we hold on to that, let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. This is an eye to heaven. It says this, but you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to the innumerable angels in festal gathering. What are you saying? You have come to heaven. And then what do you see there in heaven? And to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all. You have the word assembly there. The word there is church, the church of the firstborn. What does that mean? It means that if you are in Jesus Christ, guess what? You might have been the second-born of your family, the third-born, the 18th born. If you are in Christ, you are the firstborn. When that leper was healed by Jesus, he walked away not a leper anymore, but more importantly, he walked away a firstborn son. And what do firstborn sons get? A double inheritance. And let me just say for you ladies, what does that mean? Are you a firstborn daughter? No, you're a firstborn son. Because that's the place that gets all the promises, all the inheritance. That's the place of status. You get the inheritance of the firstborn. And so we read in 1 Peter 1, According to his great mercy, he has caused us to be born again. Born again. Firstborn status to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus, verse 4, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you. It's a beautiful truth of our status in Jesus. It's a beautiful picture of what God had instituted from the beginning all the way to the end, finding its completion in Christ himself. What an encouragement. What an encouragement. Redemption through the firstborn. So I think coming full circle, God gave us his first and best. He did not spare his only son. Is he not worthy for everything that we have? Why would you not want your children to know him? How could you ever resist such an incredible redemption? Consider your heart. Apart from Jesus, it is shot through like a leper with sin. But if you come to Jesus, he can make you clean. We need that reminder this morning. He can make you clean. Maybe today you think that you're not worthy. Maybe today you think of all the things and all the ways that you have lived that you couldn't possibly approach Jesus. I want you to know this leper, all of his issues were wide out, wide open for the whole world to see, right? If the spiritual condition of our souls could be manifested physically, that's kind of how it was for this leper. But he went straight up to Jesus and said, if you will, you can make me clean. And that's the offering to you. You have to actually go to Christ and say, if you will, you can make me clean. And so we offer you that opportunity this morning. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for your word. I thank you for the help in preaching your word. I pray for all those here, Lord, that they would hear this word and truly know it and really see the amazing gift that you've given us in your Son, your firstborn Son, so that now we can be firstborn sons. And all the privileges and all the status that comes with that and the beautiful inheritance kept for us. And for some of us, that's the only thing we got, Lord, that keeps us going, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you. I want to pray for everyone here, Lord, that they would know that the spiritual condition of their heart right now today is just like this leper. And when we really get that, and to know that there's someone that can make us clean, why would we not come? Lord, encourage us with these words. Convict us. Are we bringing our Abel offerings or our Cain offerings? Are we bringing our best, including our children? Encourage us. Help us with these words, Lord. We thank you, Lord, and we pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.